In the dark places of Sanctuary, something stirs. It whispers, promising power and domination over your enemies. All it asks in return is your soul. The great evils in the Diablo universe are a major force to be reckoned with. They revel in the pain and fear they inflict and will stop at nothing until humanity is under their heel. They were created when Anu expelled all evil from himself, which then formed into the great dragon Tathamet. They battled and killed each other in a huge explosion that shaped the universe. From Tathamet's seven-headed corpse sprung the seven great evils. Unlike the angels, who bickered and debated on humanity's fate, the great evils only ever had one idea about the world of Sanctuary: corrupt it. They were of course enraged by the renegade demons who ran off with the rebellious angels to form this world, but at the end of the day it ended up with a population that was easier to corrupt and tempt than angels, and demons love their jobs. Win-win for them. However, the starkest difference between the leaders of Hell and the leaders of Heaven is that Hell has little interest in cooperating with each other. They may all want the same goal, but they want it for themselves as the master of all. They're sort of selfish like that. These devils are divided into the lesser evils and the prime evils. Let's start with the lesser ones: Andariel, Duriel, Belial, and Asmodan. Andariel, the only female evil and twin to Duriel, was a master of emotional manipulation. She thrived on misery, guilt, betrayal, and all other emotions associated with despair. Though originally joining Belial and the other lesser evils and overthrowing the primes, an event we'll talk about a little later, she would change her mind and ally with Diablo during the events of Diablo 2, claiming a monastery to provide safe passage for the Dark Wanderer. As the end boss of Act 1, needless to say, she was slain by Protagonist. Fun fact, despite being a demon, Andariel is weak to fire. Don't know how that works with the whole burning hells thing, but I'm not here to judge. Andariel's twin was named Duriel, and he was known as the Maggot King and the Lord of Pain. Yeah, the large nude Andariel's twin is a giant bug. They're fraternal twins, okay? Regardless, he was known as the Lord of Pain because of his fixation on inflicting pain upon his enemies. He enjoys hearing them scream and typically resorts to torture to get his kicks. Much like his sister, he betrayed the prime evils and then rejoined up with Diablo, but unfortunately Diablo was less kind to Duriel and left him locked in a tomb for betraying him. It was there he truly accepted his role as the end boss of Act 2 and was slain by Protagonists. Belial, Lord of Lies. That's lies, not flies. Settle down there, piggy. He is skilled in deceit, being one of the instigators and binding force behind the rebellion against the prime evils. After this success, him and Asmodan immediately launched into a civil war over who would control Hell, having, quite obviously in hindsight, lied about sharing power. Seriously, he's the Lord of Lies. Why would anyone believe him? Regardless, he found manipulating the world of humans to be far more to his liking and possessed a boy emperor, corrupting the city of Chaldeum and allowing his coven to do his evil work. He unfortunately caught the attention of some protagonists and was slain at the end of Act 2 in Diablo 3. Asmodan, best commander, best spider-leg dude, Lord of Sin. If a sin could be committed, Asmodan's done it. He was the leader of many of Hell's armies, responsible for a lot of the victories versus the angels. He was mostly dominant during his and Belial's civil war to take over Hell. After Belial was killed at the hands of Protagonists, he launched an invasion of Sanctuary. Way less subtle than the other evils, he literally marched an army out of Hell and into Sanctuary to conquer it. He was, of course, killed by Protagonists and then got ported over to Heroes of the Storm, where he could slam dunk his enemies for all eternity. Now, rewinding a bit to that rebellion bit, once Sanctuary was established for good, the angels and demons made a pact that neither side was to interfere with the mortals. They would grow unaffected. However, not too long after this pact, the lesser evils formed a rebellion and expelled the prime evils to Sanctuary, banishing them from Hell. Some say that this was because the lesser evils wanted to rule Hell. Others say it was a loophole in the pact. The prime evils aren't aligned with Hell anymore, they're renegades that Hell isn't responsible for. Whatever the reason, they unleashed Mephisto, Baal, and Diablo upon humanity, which leads us right into talking about those three. First up, Mephisto, Lord of Hatred. Far better at manipulation than a simple Lord of Lies, Mephisto was known to turn entire civilizations against each other, and was even able to give direction to his fellow prime evils, despite not quite matching them in strength. This was largely because his schemes tended to work well for all parties rather than just himself. Despite this, Mephisto was the first to be captured by the Herodium upon being released on Sanctuary, but that did not mean his power was so easily contained. The soul stone that he was trapped in still allowed him to exert his influence, and so he began corrupting the High Council of Zakarum, and in turn the Zakarum faith. Centuries passed, and he was able to have the priest fashion an orb to control the remainder of the Zakarum faithful who were not aware of the corruption, and greeted his fellow primevals eagerly when they came to release him. However, it was not soon after this meeting that he ran aground of some protagonists and was killed. Baal, Lord of Destruction. If there ever was a Lord of Hell that enjoyed fighting, it was Baal. He was constantly at war, with angels, sanctuary, other demons, random people on the street. You can think it, Baal wants to cause damage to it. Baal was the second to be captured after the rebellion, but his soulstone was destroyed in the process and could only partially seal him. A Haradrim by the name of Tal Rasha sacrificed himself by allowing the Haradrim to seal him in a tomb with the binding enchantments and plunge the soulstone into his chest, where he would wrestle with Baal's spirit for what he presumed would be all eternity. Unfortunately, it was only a few centuries as the Dark Wanderer, who was conveniently possessed by Diablo, came to free him. He immediately set off to corrupt the World Stone of Sanctuary in an attempt to enslave humanity, and was successful until some protagonists showed up and killed him. His corruption had already dug in too deep, and the World Stone had to be destroyed to prevent his schemes from reaching fruition. Still, he caused quite a bit of destruction, so I'm sure he would have been pleased at the size of the crater caused by blowing up the World Stone. And finally, we come to Diablo. His name is on the box for a reason, folks. Diablo is the Lord of Terror and the most powerful of all the evils. He is the one who is most effective at corrupting and dominating Sanctuary. After his banishment, he was the last to be captured of the prime evils, and his soulstone was hidden in a cave system, above which a monastery was built to hide it. This monastery became known as the Tristram Cathedral. Archbishop Lazarus of the Zakarum faith was the first, lured into the catacombs by whispers in his nightmares until he found the soulstone and shattered it, releasing Diablo's spirit. From here, Lazarus encouraged King Leoric to make Tristram his home and capital. Diablo drove the king mad, bringing a rain of blood upon his country, and took possession of his son Albrecht as his mortal form in the world. Albrecht's brother Aidan would take up arms into the cathedral and slay the demon, forcing him back into the broken shard of his soulstone. He then plunged the stone into his head in an attempt to contain the demon. This act was considered by many sources to be a bad idea. After doing that, he spent some time with a witch named Adria and got her pregnant. She was kinda into demon-possessed men, don't judge. Anyway, this'll be relevant later. Diablo's spirit succeeded in subverting Aidan's will, and he became known as the Dark Wanderer, traveling east to free Mephisto and Baal. In his wake, he summoned demons who slaughtered entire towns. He traveled to the tomb of Tal Rasha and freed Baal, and then to the capital of the Zakarum faith to free Mephisto. Once completing this task, he opened a portal to Hell in order to rally the forces there and launch a full-scale invasion of Sanctuary. But, as is the case with these sorts of things, at the last minute a group of protagonists followed him into Hell and killed him right in his home court and destroyed the soulstone that contained him. And now, this is where the story combines for every single one of the great evils. You see, Adria gave birth to a girl named Leah. He handed her off to the Haradrim and then went about collecting all the essences of the slain evils, preparing them to be absorbed into something called the Black Soulstone. She hitched a ride with some protagonists who had teamed up with her daughter to collect the final two, Belial and Asmodan, before enacting her final super evil plan. Now with all 7 evils in one soulstone, she plunged it into Leia, who, as we established, is the daughter of Adria and a Diablo-possessed Aidan. Diablo was reborn, sleeker and deadlier than ever. For the first time since Tophamet's death, all 7 evils were in one being, and he immediately marched on heaven with all the forces of hell at his back. He almost succeeded in corrupting the Silver Spire, which angels are born. Almost. And he would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those protagonists and their dog. The prime evil was sent back into the Black Soulstone. Nothing lasts forever though, and the Black Soulstone was stolen by a renegade angel, and in the process of defeating him, the Black Soulstone was shattered, freeing Diablo's spirit to suplex people and Heroes of Storm forevermore. No, but seriously, we don't know what he's doing these days, and that's a scary thought. So there you have it, folks. That's your tour of the Lords of Hell. Now that they're all combined into one super scary Diablo being, who knows what's next for him in the realm of Sanctuary? Only one thing is for certain. Diablo will be back. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons, and take care, everybody.